When examining the vast gap between law and commercial practice at sea, one must keep in mind that even on land, the central government faced serious difficulties in imposing its will and authority, enforcing the law, providing security on roads and city streets, collecting taxes, and above all, convincing its subjects of the legitimacy of such efforts at centralized governance. This was doubly true at sea and at the water's edge, where the government's reach exceeded its grasp and where its jurisdiction was highly contested and mostly ignored. Coastal villages and port towns were the point of contact between maritime commerce and the more ordered commerce of landed communities. And they exhibited the friction between the unregulated, violent nature of seaborne trade and the law enforcement and taxation initiatives of landed governments. Okay. The increasingly severe rhetorical, legislative, and judicial measures against illegal trade were not effective in deterring smugglers, freebooters, and their confederates from these trades, but these endeavors reflected the growing frustration of government agencies with the open lawlessness in the country. And they also, of course, reflected the increasingly desperate financial needs of the Treasury. If the government's law and order campaign was an effort to punish wrongdoers and communicate to the public new standards of criminality, the limited dispersal of law enforcement agents in distant ports undermined both undertakings. Woefully outnumbered by active smuggling crews, pirates, and wreckers, customs agents in Britain, and even more so in the colonies, were too few and too marginalized to do their job effectively. Now, the post of customs officer was a thankless job involving an unattractive combination of low wages, social isolation, and high risk of violence and prosecution. While customs authorities and courts did have intermittent success in capturing contraband cargoes and convicting smugglers, they were surrounded by a sea of contraband and systemic customs evasion. Local communities in English and American port towns discouraged customs agents and other imperial office holders from enforcing imperial law in a variety of ways: friendship, peer pressure, community values, bribery, other financial incentives, threats of violence, actual violence, threats of prosecution, and actual prosecutions. In England, this was especially true in ports farther away from London, in the north and the west of England. Okay. Scottish and Irish ports, even more than English ones, were known for hostility towards the customs service. Ireland, in particular, operated as a de facto free trade zone. Indeed, the stark violence towards customs agents that was evident in England was not as prevalent in Ireland and North America, since enforcement efforts there were much weaker than along England's southern coast. And when enforcement efforts picked up in America in the 1760s, towards the Revolution, so did violence towards imperial customs officers in America. To a considerable degree, the rapid development during the 18th century of major port cities in North America and Western Britain, such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, Liverpool, Bristol, and Glasgow, this urban growth was a product of the thriving smuggling industry in these ports and the security and hospitality that these distant communities offered freebooters and their partners. Because distance strained available manpower and hampered the effort to curb and delegitimize illegal trade and to collect the customs, various measures were taken to enhance the presence of governmental enforcers at sea and in distant ports. For example, responding to local juries and magistrates habitually sheltering freebooters from arrest and prosecution, Parliament transferred piracy cases in 1700 from civilian courts to admiralty courts, those military tribunals you've read about. As import taxes continued to rise in the 18th century and the ranks of illegal traders swelled, Britain established coastal patrols by the Preventive Service, expanded the size and mandate of the Customs Service, and also offered naval officers bounties to apprehend smugglers. And the king attracted even more agents to this task by issuing privateering commissions against smugglers. So the solution to the problem of distance was transporting or attracting more manpower to police the various localities of imperial trade. To the same end, imperial administrators also attempted to change bureaucratic structures to reduce what they considered the corrupting influence of local communities and institutions on enforcement agents of the royal government: customs agents, naval officers, prosecutors, judges, governors, etc.